Admiral Thesia Corvan pressed her scaled palm against the command console, watching the tactical display with growing dread. The Caliph homeworld of Nexaria hung before them like a jewel, its blue-green surface dotted with gleaming cities that housed 12 billion souls. In 43 hours, it would be nothing but cosmic dust. "Status report," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority earned through 6 decades of military service. Her forearms moved in practiced precision across multiple control interfaces simultaneously, a testament to her species' evolved multitasking abilities. "Admiral, the outer defense grid has fallen completely," reported Commander Zenth, his usually composed demeanor cracking under the strain. "The enemy has breached the asteroid belt fortifications. Our remaining fleet elements are falling back to the planetary defense ring." Thesia's secondary eyes focused on the horrifying display, while her primary pair remained locked on the main strategic overview. Red indicators marked the positions of their enemies, beings they had come to know only as the Devourers. No attempts at communication had succeeded. No quarter was ever given. They simply arrived, consumed everything in their path, and moved on to the next system. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. 47 vessels of various classifications," Zenth replied quietly. "Down from our original defensive fleet of 312. The numbers told a story of systematic annihilation. The Caliph Empire had ruled this sector of the galaxy for over 2,000 years. Their technology was advanced, their military disciplined and experienced. They had fought pirates, rival civilizations, and even ancient automated defense systems left behind by long-dead races. Nothing had prepared them for this. The Devourers defied every tactical doctrine in their military academies. Their ships seemed to bend physics itself, moving in ways that should have torn apart any known material. They absorbed energy weapons, shrugged off kinetic bombardments, and their own weapons fired some form of dark energy that simply erased matter at the molecular level. "Sir, we're receiving a communication from Fleet Command," announced Lieutenant Vera from the communications station. "Put it through," Thesia ordered. The holographic image of Supreme Admiral Koroth materialized above the command table. The elderly Caliph leader looked haggard, his usually pristine ceremonial armor scorched and damaged. Behind him, the flagship's command center showed clear signs of recent battle damage. "Thesia," Koroth began without preamble, "I'm ordering all remaining fleet elements to execute Protocol 7. Koroth. 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 A chill ran down Thesia's spine. Protocol 7 was the evacuation of all non-combatant personnel from the homeworld. It meant they were officially acknowledging that Nexaria could not be defended. "Supreme Admiral, with respect, our defensive positions can still—" "No," Koroth interrupted firmly. "Our science teams have analyzed the enemy's approach vector and consumption rate. Even if we threw every ship we have at them in a direct assault, we might delay them by 6 hours at most. The civilian evacuation takes priority now." Thesia felt something break inside her chest. She had been born on Nexaria, in the crystal spires of the capital city of Athendral. Her children lived there. Her mate worked in the orbital research stations that would be among the first targets destroyed. "How many can we evacuate?" she asked. "Perhaps 2 million, Koroth admitted. "The transport ships that survived the earlier raids can carry that many if we pack them beyond safe capacity. The rest—" Quote, he didn't need to finish. 10 billion souls would die because they simply didn't have enough ships to save them all. "There is one other matter," Koroth continued, his voice taking on a different tone. "Our deep space monitoring stations picked up something unusual approximately 18 hours ago. A single vessel, moving at impossible speed, heading directly for our system. Another Devourer scout ship? We don't think so. The energy signature is completely different. The ship appears to be using some form of spatial distortion drive we've never encountered before. More importantly, it's not approaching from the same vector as the Devourer fleet." Thesia frowned. Could it be reinforcements? Perhaps the Centauran Alliance finally decided to honor their mutual defense treaty? The ship profile doesn't match any known Centauran design. In fact, it doesn't match any design in our databases. Whatever it is, it's not from any civilization we've encountered. A new mystery ship arriving at the worst possible time seemed like a cruel joke from the universe. Still, Thessia found herself clinging to the faintest hope. What's their estimated arrival time? 41 hours, 17 minutes. Almost precisely when the Devourer fleet reaches Nexaria. The timing was either an incredible coincidence or something else entirely. Thessia had learned long ago that in warfare, coincidences were rare. Orders, Supreme Admiral, continue with the evacuation protocols. I want our fastest ships loading civilians immediately. As for this mystery vessel, we'll attempt communication when it enters our outer sensor range. If it's hostile, we can't be in a worse situation than we already are. If it's friendly? Korath paused, his expression growing distant. If it's friendly, perhaps we'll learn what it means to witness a miracle. The communication ended, leaving Thessia alone with her thoughts and the steady stream of tactical updates that painted an increasingly hopeless picture. She turned to her communications officer, Lieutenant Vera. I want you to begin broadcasting a general distress signal on all frequencies. Include our tactical situation, the threat we're facing, and coordinates for refugee fleet rendezvous points. Yes, Admiral. Should I include warnings about the Devourers? Include everything. If there are any other civilizations monitoring our communications, they deserve to know what's coming. Maybe someone, somewhere, has dealt with this threat before. As her crew worked frantically to coordinate the massive evacuation effort, Thessia found herself staring at the tactical display showing the approximate position of the mystery ship. According to their calculations, it was still moving at speeds that should have been physically impossible. No known drive system could sustain such velocities without tearing a ship apart at the molecular level. Hours passed in a blur of logistics and increasingly desperate reports from the outer system. The Devourers had begun deploying some form of harvesting technology. Enormous structures that stripped entire asteroids of their mass in minutes. They weren't just destroying everything in their path, they were consuming it, adding it to their own fleet's mass and capabilities. Admiral, Commander Zenth called out urgently. We're detecting massive energy spikes from the enemy fleet. They appear to be accelerating their approach. Thessia's heart sank. New arrival time? 36 hours, 12 minutes. They had lost 5 hours. The mystery ship would still arrive after the Devourers began their final assault on Nexaria. Whatever help it might have offered would come too late. Update the evacuation schedules, she ordered. We need to get as many people out as possible before... Admiral, Lieutenant Vera interrupted, her voice filled with excitement. I'm receiving a transmission. It's the mystery ship. What? That's impossible. They're still 16 hours outside normal communication range. I know, sir, but the signal is coming in clearly. It's using some form of quantum entanglement relay system. The signal is instantaneous across any distance. Thessia had heard theories about such technology, but no civilization had ever successfully implemented it on a practical scale. The power requirements alone should have been prohibitive. Put it through, she ordered. The main view screen flickered, and for a moment, showed only static. Then, the image cleared, revealing a sight that made every member of the bridge crew freeze in shock. The being on the screen was unlike anything in their databases. It stood upright on 2 legs, had 2 arms, and its head was positioned at the top of its torso. A body plan that seemed impossibly primitive, compared to the sophisticated 4-armed, dual torso structure of the Caleth. Its skin was a pale color with no scales or protective plating visible. Most disturbing of all, it had only 2 eyes, positioned at the front of its head in what could only be described as a predator configuration. When it spoke, the universal translator struggled for a moment before finding the proper linguistic patterns. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Indomitable. We received your distress signal approximately 19 hours ago. We are currently en route to your position. Thessia found her voice first. Captain Chen, This is Admiral Thesia Corvan, of the Calith Defense Force. We appreciate any assistance you can provide, but I must warn you, the enemy you are approaching is unlike anything we have encountered. They have destroyed our entire fleet and show no signs of being deterred by conventional weapons. The human for that was apparently what this species was called, smiled in what the translator indicated was a gesture of reassurance rather than aggression. Admiral Corvan, we've been monitoring the tactical situation since we detected your distress call. We've also been analyzing the energy signatures and behavioral patterns of these devourers. I think we might have a solution to your problem. With respect, Captain Chen, we have been fighting these beings for 6 months. Our best scientists and military strategists have found no effective defense against their technology. That's because you've been trying to fight them using conventional tactics, Chen replied. The devourers operate on principles of energy absorption and matter conversion. They're designed to counter traditional energy weapons and kinetic bombardments. But there are other approaches. Thesia felt a spark of hope despite herself. What are you proposing? Give us 18 hours, Admiral. When we arrive, we'll show you how humans deal with impossible odds. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Finally, Commander Zenth spoke. Admiral, our databases contain no reference to this species called humans or their civilization. Where did they come from? Thesia stared at the empty view screen, replaying the brief conversation in her mind. There had been something in the human captain's voice, not arrogance or false bravado, but a quiet confidence that seemed utterly unshakable. I don't know, Commander, but right now, they're the only hope we have. She turned back to the tactical display, watching the red markers of the Devourer fleet creep steadily closer to her homeworld. In 18 hours, they would learn whether humanity's confidence was justified, or if they had just witnessed the last communication from another doomed species. Either way, the next day would determine the fate of not just the Calith Empire, but possibly the entire sector. And somehow, it all depended on a mysterious ship crewed by beings with only 2 arms, 2 eyes, and an apparently unshakable belief in their ability to accomplish the impossible. The evacuation continued around them, thousands of ships desperately fleeing toward the outer system, as the end of everything they had known approached with mathematical certainty. But for the first time in months, Admiral Thesia Corvan allowed herself to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, salvation might arrive from the most unexpected source imaginable. The human ship materialized out of faster-than-light travel, with a precision that defied every principle Admiral Thesia Corvan understood about interstellar navigation. Most vessels required several minutes to reorient their sensors and stabilize their position after dropping out of FTL. The Indomitable simply appeared, fully operational and moving with purpose toward the Devourer fleet. Sensor analysis, Commander Zenth, Thesia ordered, unable to keep the amazement from her voice. Admiral, the ship's design is unusual, Zenth reported, his secondary arms working frantically across multiple analysis stations. The hull appears to be constructed from some form of adaptive metal alloy. It's changing configuration even as we watch. On the main display, the human vessel was indeed shifting its shape. What had appeared to be a sleek exploration craft was extending armor plating, revealing weapon systems, and deploying sensor arrays that had been completely hidden moments before. The transformation was seamless, like watching a flower bloom in fast motion. Mass readings are inconsistent, added Lieutenant Vera. The ship registers as approximately 2 kilometers in length, but its gravitational signature suggests it has the mass of something much larger. Compressed matter technology? Thesia mused. It was theoretical among the Calith, requiring energy expenditures beyond their current capabilities. Unknown, Admiral. The energy patterns are unlike anything in our databases. A new communication request came through from the Indomitable. Thesia nodded for it to be accepted. Captain Chen appeared on screen once again, but now she was clearly on a military bridge surrounded by her crew. Thesia could see other humans moving with practiced efficiency, their simple 2-armed physiology somehow managing to operate control systems that would have challenged even the Calith's 4-armed coordination. Admiral Corvan, we're beginning our approach to the enemy fleet. I need you to pull all your remaining ships back to a minimum distance of 50,000 kilometers from the Devourers. Captain Chen, Our defensive positions won't survive what we're about to do, Chen interrupted gently. Trust me, Admiral. We've dealt with energy absorption entities before. The key is not to feed them what they're expecting. Thessia hesitated. Pulling back their remaining defenses would leave Nexaria completely exposed if the human plan failed. But looking at the tactical display, she realized their current positions would only delay the inevitable by a few hours at most. All fleet elements, implement immediate tactical withdrawal to 50,000-kilometer perimeter, she commanded. This is Admiral Corvin. Comply immediately. As the Calith ships began their withdrawal, the Indomitable accelerated toward the Devourer fleet. Thessia watched in fascination as the human vessel's approach vector seemed to shift randomly. Following no tactical doctrine she recognized. They're moving like prey trying to avoid a predator, observed Commander Zenth. Or a predator studying its prey, Thessia corrected, remembering the forward-facing eyes of the human captain. The Devourers reacted to the approaching ship exactly as they had to every previous threat, by immediately opening fire with their dark energy weapons. The beams of annihilation that had effortlessly destroyed Calith dreadnoughts lanced toward the small human vessel, and missed. Not because the weapons were inaccurate, the Devourers never missed, but because the Indomitable was somehow no longer where it had been a fraction of a second earlier. The ship seemed to slip between dimensions, reappearing slightly displaced from its previous position just as the destructive beams passed harmlessly through empty space. How are they doing that? Zenth demanded, his voice filled with professional curiosity and growing respect. Micro-dimensional shifting. Thessia breathed, recognizing the phenomenon from theoretical physics texts. They're moving the ship into parallel dimensional space for microsecond intervals. The energy required should be astronomical. The Devourers, apparently confused by their inability to target the human ship, began firing more rapidly. The space around the Indomitable filled with deadly energy discharges, any one of which could have destroyed a Calith heavy cruiser. The human ship danced between them like a leaf in a storm, never quite where the weapons expected it to be. Admiral, I'm reading massive energy buildup from the human vessel, reported Lieutenant Vera. But it's not charging weapons. The energy signature is odd. On screen, the Indomitable had stopped its evasive maneuvers and was now moving directly toward the center of the Devourer formation. For a moment, Thessia thought the humans had decided on a suicide attack. Then the space around the human ship began to change. Reality itself seemed to ripple outward from the Indomitable in waves. Where the ripples touched the Devourer ships, something impossible happened. The alien vessels began to slow down, not just their movement, but everything about them. Their weapons fired more slowly, their defensive fields flickered at reduced frequencies. Even their hull configurations shifted at a dramatically reduced rate. They're manipulating local temporal fields, Thessia whispered. They're slowing down time around the enemy ships. The effect was localized and precise. The Devourers found themselves operating at perhaps 1/10 their normal speed, while the Indomitable moved through the affected area at full velocity. It was like watching a hawk diving through a formation of flying insects. But the humans weren't attacking in any conventional sense. Instead, they were deploying some form of strange projectiles, not weapons, but devices that attached themselves to the hulls of the slowed Devourer ships, and began emitting a brilliant blue energy. What are those devices doing? Commander Zenth asked. The answer became apparent within minutes. The Devourer ships that had been struck by the blue energy devices began to change. Their dark, organic-looking hulls started to brighten, and their aggressive formations began to break apart as individual ships moved away from their fleet mates. Admiral Corvin, came Captain Chen's voice over the communications channel. You might want to move your evacuation ships to a safer distance. This is about to get interesting. 80. Before Thessia could ask what the human meant, the affected Devourer ships began firing, but not at the human vessel or the Calith fleet. They were targeting other Devourers. They've turned them, Thessia realized with shock. Somehow, the humans have reprogrammed the Devourers to attack their own fleet. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded military history. The Indomitable continued its impossible dance through space, avoiding the increasingly desperate attacks of the remaining Devourer ships, while systematically converting more of them to fight against their former fleetmates. The temporal manipulation fields made it impossible for the enemy to coordinate an effective response. "How is this possible?" demanded Commander Zenth. The Devourers showed no signs of individual intelligence. They operated like a hive mind. They did operate like a hive mind. Captain Chen's voice came through the communications channel, the key word being, did. "We've introduced a virus into their collective consciousness, not a computer virus, but something much more sophisticated. A mimetic construct that redefines their basic operational parameters." Thessia felt her understanding of warfare shift fundamentally. The humans weren't just using advanced technology, they were fighting on levels the Caliph had never even considered. They had turned the Devourer's greatest strength, their unified consciousness, into a critical vulnerability. "We studied your tactical reports during our approach," Chen continued. "The Devourers absorb energy and convert matter. But they also share information instantaneously across their entire network. Once we introduced our construct into one ship, it propagated through their entire fleet within minutes. On the tactical display, the results were becoming clear. More than half the Devourer fleet was now fighting against the remainder, and the converted ships were systematically hunting down and destroying their former allies with ruthless efficiency. The aliens who had seemed unstoppable just hours before were being torn apart by their own forces. "This is incredible," Thessia said. "But what happens to the converted ships? Are they under human control now?" "Under human control now? Not exactly," Chen replied. "We've given them new priorities. Instead of consuming everything in their path, they're now programmed to seek out and eliminate other Devourers wherever they might be found. They'll spend the rest of their existence hunting down the remainder of their species across the galaxy." The implications were staggering. Not only had the humans saved Nexaria and the Kaolith Empire, they had potentially saved countless other civilizations that might have fallen to the Devourers in the future. "Captain Chen," Thessia said formally, "the Kaolith Empire owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid. You have saved not just our lives, but our entire civilization." "Think nothing of it, Admiral," Chen replied with what the translator indicated was modesty. "This is what humans do. We solve problems that seem impossible until you look at them from the right angle." As they watched, the last of the unconverted Devourer ships was destroyed by its former fleetmates. The converted ships immediately dispersed, heading toward the edges of the star system, and presumably beyond, carrying their new programming to hunt down any remaining members of their species. "If you don't mind me asking," Thessia said, "how did humanity develop such advanced technology? Your ship alone contains systems that surpass our best theoretical models." Chen smiled again. And this time, Thessia was beginning to understand that the expression conveyed warmth rather than threat. "We didn't develop it, Admiral. We discovered it. You see, humanity has an unusual relationship with impossible situations. When we encounter something that can't be done, our first instinct isn't to accept defeat. It's to figure out why it can't be done, and then find a way to do it anyway. And the technology to manipulate time and dimensions? We found the basic principles in the ruins of a dead civilization about 50 years ago. They had built the theory but never implemented it because they calculated it was impossible to generate enough power. So we figured out how to make it work with the power sources we had available." Thessia felt a chill of realization. "You reverse-engineered technology from a dead civilization and made it work with your existing capabilities? That shouldn't be possible." "That's what the previous owners thought too," Chen said cheerfully. "They're the ones who built those ruins we found." The casual way the human discussed what amounted to technological miracles was almost as unsettling as it was impressive. Thessia began to understand that she might be dealing with a species that didn't just solve impossible problems, they specialized in them. "Captain Chen, if I may ask, what brought humanity to this sector of the galaxy? Are you explorers? Traders?" Chen's expression grew slightly more serious. "We're many things, Admiral. But right now, we're what you might call problem solvers. We received your distress signal, and solving problems like this is what we do. You traveled across interstellar distances just to help strangers? Wouldn't you? The question hung in the air, and Thessia realized she wasn't entirely sure of the answer. The Caliph had mutual defense treaties with several species, but those were based on shared interests and calculated advantages. The idea of traveling vast distances to help complete strangers, with no obvious benefit, seemed almost alien to her way of thinking. "I'm not sure," she admitted honestly. "That's okay," Chen said gently. "Different species develop different priorities. Humans just happen to have evolved with a strong protective instinct. When we see someone in trouble, especially someone facing impossible odds, we have a hard time walking away." Around them, the space that had been filled with the terror of impending annihilation was now peaceful. The evacuation ships were already beginning to turn back toward Nexaria, carrying the news that their homeworld was safe. The converted Devourer ships were distant points of light, disappearing into deep space to continue their new mission. "What happens now?" Thessia asked. "Now you rebuild," Chen replied. "Your civilization is safe, and we've eliminated a threat that was spreading across this entire sector. As for us, we'll continue on our way. There are always more impossible problems to solve." The human captain paused, then added, "Though we might stay in communication. Humanity is always interested in meeting new species, especially ones as innovative as the Caliph. Your four-armed coordination abilities are fascinating from an engineering perspective." Thessia felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with her ship's life support systems. For the first time in months, the future seemed bright again. Not just survival, but the possibility of growth, of new friendships, of challenges that could be overcome rather than simply endured. "Captain Chen," she said formally, "humanity will always be welcome in Caliph space. Always." As the Indomitable prepared to continue its journey to whatever impossible problem awaited its attention next, Thessia found herself looking at the stars with new eyes. Somewhere out there, traveling between distant suns, was a species that had made the impossible possible simply because someone had asked for help. It was, she reflected, a very human thing to do. 3 days after the impossible victory, Admiral Thessia Corvan stood in the rebuilt command center of the Caliph Defense Force, watching reports stream in from across their territory. What she was seeing defied not just military doctrine, but her fundamental understanding of how the universe worked. The converted Devourer ships hadn't simply disappeared into deep space as Captain Chen had suggested. They were actively hunting down isolated Devourer cells across 3 star systems, eliminating threats that the Caliph military hadn't even known existed. More importantly, they were sending detailed tactical data back to both Caliph and human forces about Devourer weaknesses and operational patterns. "Admiral," Commander Zenth announced, his voice filled with barely contained excitement, "we've received another report from the Centauran Alliance. The humans have solved the Crimson Blight situation in the Vega system." Thessia turned from the tactical display, her forearms instinctively shifting to attention posture. "The Crimson Blight? That's been consuming entire planets for over a decade. The Centaurans classified it as an extinction-level threat, with no known solution. According to their report, a human science vessel called the Breakthrough arrived in the system 4 days ago. They analyzed the blight for approximately 6 hours, then deployed what they're calling a biological countermatrix. The blight started consuming itself within 12 hours and was completely eliminated within 2 days. The scale of what Zenth was describing was staggering. The Crimson Blight had been considered one of the galaxy's most dangerous phenomena, a self-replicating biological weapon that converted all organic matter into more of itself. Entire civilizations had fallen to its spread, and the greatest scientific minds in known space had declared it impossible to stop once established on a planetary surface. How did they solve it so quickly when our best xenobiologists couldn't make progress after years of research? The human approach was... Zenth paused, consulting his notes. Unorthodox. Instead of trying to destroy the blight directly, they created an engineered organism that the blight would preferentially consume. The organism was designed to be irresistibly attractive to the blight's consumption mechanisms, but contained genetic sequences that, when absorbed, reprogrammed the blight to target only itself. Thessia felt the same sense of conceptual vertigo she had experienced watching the Devourer fleet turn against itself. They turned a biological weapon against itself using its own consumption mechanisms as a delivery system. Precisely. The human science team apparently described it as giving the blight indigestion so severe, it decides to eat itself instead of everything else. The casual way humans described solutions to galaxy-threatening problems was becoming a pattern that both amazed and slightly unnerved Thessia. She activated her personal communication console and sent a priority message to Supreme Admiral Koroth. The elderly leader's hologram appeared within minutes, but he looked different than he had during the crisis. The haggard exhaustion had been replaced by something Thessia had never seen in his expression before, a kind of wondering anticipation, as if he was waiting for the next miracle to announce itself. Thessia, I assume you've heard about the Vega situation? Yes, Supreme Admiral. I'm beginning to understand that we may have encountered something unprecedented. Humanity isn't just technologically advanced, they approach problems in ways that seem to redefine what's possible. Koroth nodded slowly. I've been in communication with leaders from 17 different civilizations over the past 2 days. Every one of them has a story about humans solving problems that were considered impossible. The Andromedan Collective's quantum plague, the Silicon Republic's time loop disaster, the Zephyrian Empire's dimensional inversion catastrophe. All solved by humans? All solved by humans, usually within days of their arrival. And here's the most remarkable part, they don't seem to consider any of these solutions particularly impressive. They approach galaxy-ending catastrophes the same way other species might approach routine maintenance problems. Thessia moved to her office window, looking out at Nixaria's orbital shipyards, where construction crews were already beginning work on improved defensive platforms. The designs they were building incorporated principles learned from studying the Indomitable's brief presence in their system. Supreme Admiral, have we learned anything about where humanity comes from? Their origins? Their civilization structure? Limited information. But what we've discovered is illuminating. Earth, their homeworld, is apparently a death world by most civilized standards. Extreme weather variations, predatory megafauna, frequent geological catastrophes, and astronomical phenomena that would make most planets uninhabitable. Thessia felt her scales shift in what humans would have called a shiver. They evolved on a world that was actively trying to kill them? It appears so, and rather than develop technology to escape their environment, they developed technology to master it. Human civilization seems to have evolved around the concept that any problem can be solved if you're willing to approach it from enough different angles. A new communication request appeared on Thessia's console. To her surprise, it was from Captain Chen, aboard the Indomitable. Admiral Korvan, Chen said when the connection established. I hope you don't mind the intrusion, but we wanted to share some information we thought might interest you. Of course, Captain Chen. What can you tell us? Our analysis of the Devourer technology has revealed something significant. The species that originally created them appears to have been wiped out by their own creation approximately 50,000 years ago. The Devourers we encountered were essentially automated weapons left running without any oversight. The implications struck Thessia immediately. You mean the original threat was eliminated long ago? And what we faced were just the remnants continuing their programming? Exactly. Which explains why they showed no real tactical adaptation or strategic thinking. They were following pre-programmed instructions written by a species that died before developing countermeasures for their own weapon. Chen paused, and her expression grew slightly more serious. But here's the concerning part. We've detected similar automated weapon signatures in at least 12 other sectors of the galaxy. Different technologies, different approaches, but the same basic pattern: extinct civilizations whose final weapons are still operating autonomously. Thessia felt the familiar chill of a new threat assessment, but this time, it was tempered by something she had never experienced before: confidence that the problem could be solved. Are you suggesting that humanity intends to address these threats? We're already en route to the nearest one, Chen confirmed. The quantum storms in the Rigel sector appear to be generated by self-replicating energy manipulation devices. Should be interesting to solve. The casual way Chen discussed tackling galaxy-threatening phenomena was becoming almost routine, But Thesia was beginning to understand the psychology behind it. Humans didn't see these challenges as insurmountable obstacles. They saw them as particularly interesting puzzles. Captain Chen, if you don't mind me asking, what does humanity gain from solving these problems? You're expending enormous resources and risking your lives for civilizations you've never met. Chen smiled, and this time Thesia recognized the expression as one of genuine warmth, mixed with something that might have been amusement. Admiral, let me tell you a story about human history. About 1,000 years ago, one of our civilizations faced a plague that was killing millions of people. A brilliant scientist developed a cure, but instead of selling it for profit or using it to gain political power, he gave the formula away freely to anyone who asked. Thesia waited for the explanation of this seemingly irrational behavior. When people asked him why, he said something that became a fundamental part of human philosophy. I can't patent the sun. He meant that some discoveries are too important to be owned by any individual or organization. They belong to everyone. And this applies to your current activities? In a way, yes. Humans have discovered that we're very good at solving impossible problems. That ability doesn't belong to us alone, it belongs to everyone who might benefit from it. We can't patent the solution to extinction-level threats. The philosophy was so fundamentally different from standard interspecies relations that Thesia found herself struggling to fully comprehend it. Most civilizations guarded their advantages carefully, trading knowledge only for concrete benefits. Admiral, Commander Zenth interrupted from the bridge. We're receiving a priority communication from the Galactic Council. They're requesting an immediate conference regarding recent developments. Thesia excused herself from the conversation with Captain Chen and accepted the council communication. The holographic images of representatives from major galactic civilizations materialized around her command center, a rare gathering that usually indicated either a major crisis or a fundamental shift in galactic politics. Counselor Vex of the Andromedan Collective spoke first, her crystalline form shimmering with what Thesia recognized as carefully controlled excitement. Admiral Corvin, the Council has been monitoring reports of human activities across multiple sectors. We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. What specifically concerns the Council? Thesia asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. The humans have solved 7 different extinction-level threats in the past month alone, announced Counselor Thrain of the Zephyrian Empire. Problems that our combined civilizations have struggled with for decades or centuries. They resolve in days. This represents either the greatest opportunity or the greatest threat in recorded galactic history. Counselor Morpheus of the Silicon Republic's electronic voice crackled through the transmission. Our analysis indicates that human technological capabilities exceed our combined knowledge base by several orders of magnitude, yet they show no signs of territorial expansion or resource acquisition. Their behavior patterns don't match any known aggressive or expansionist species. What are you asking me to determine? Thesia inquired. We need to know their true intentions, Counselor Vex replied. A species capable of casually solving galaxy-threatening problems could reshape civilization itself if they chose to do so. The Council needs to understand whether humanity represents a potential ally or an existential threat. Thesia considered her response carefully. Over the past few days, she had probably interacted with humans more than any other. Caliph, and possibly more than most beings in known space. Based on my observations, she said slowly, humanity appears to be motivated by principles that are unusual in interspecies relations. They seem to genuinely view problem-solving as its own reward, and they appear to have evolved a philosophy that treats beneficial knowledge as something that should be shared rather than hoarded. That's what concerns us, Counselor Thrain admitted. Such behavior is unprecedented. Every civilization develops competitive advantages and guards them carefully. A species that gives away solutions to impossible problems defies all standard models of civilization development. Unless, Counselor Morpheus interjected, they have access to so many solutions that sharing them doesn't represent a significant loss, which implies a level of technological and intellectual capability that surpasses our ability to measure. The conversation continued for another hour, but Thesia found herself thinking about Captain Chen's casual mention of their next destination. The quantum storms in the Rigel sector had been raging for 300 years, consuming entire star systems and making vast regions of space uninhabitable. The greatest minds in the galaxy had declared them a permanent hazard to be avoided rather than solved. Humanity was flying directly toward them with the apparent expectation that they would find a solution within days of arrival. As the council conference ended and Thessia returned to her regular duties, she realized that the galaxy was about to change in ways that none of them could fully anticipate. Humanity had introduced a new paradigm where impossible problems were simply interesting challenges waiting for the right approach. 3 days later, reports began arriving from the Rigel sector. The quantum storms had been neutralized using what humans described as dimensional pressure release valves that allowed the excess energy to dissipate harmlessly into parallel space. The solution had taken exactly 37 hours to implement. Admiral Thessia Corvin added the report to her growing file of human achievements and made a decision that would influence Calith policy for generations to come. Her people would seek to learn not just human technology, but human thinking patterns. If the future belonged to those who could solve impossible problems, then the Calith Empire would need to understand how humans had made the impossible routine. Outside her office window, the first ships designed with human-inspired adaptive technology were taking their maiden voyages. They represented more than just improved military capability, they represented a new way of approaching the universe itself. In the depths of space, the Indomitable was already accelerating toward its next impossible challenge, carrying solutions the galaxy didn't even know it needed yet. Behind it, a growing network of species was beginning to understand that the age of accepting defeat had ended. Salvation, it turned out, had a very human face, and it was just getting started.